Please be seated. So welcome to another class of the Peaceful Solution Character Education Program Teacher Certification Course. It's great that you were able to make it here tonight, or this evening, those of you that are here at headquarters. And for those of you that are online also, it's great that you've been able to make it. Tune in, look up at the top of your screen, whether you're looking at a phone or whether you're on a desktop or something. You'll be able to find in there, just look for where you can download the present book, which right now we are in if you look at the overhead there, we are in the responsibility unit, the Peaceful Solution Character Education responsibility unit right there, okay? So, depending on where you're at, those of you here at headquarters, I see the familiar faces, and most of you have been here through the entire time that we've been teaching this particular time around. And for those of you that are online, you might have just dropped in now, you might have come in on a book ago or something, or you might have been with us from the beginning, whichever way it goes. What you'll see is that we revert back or refer back to previous chapters and previous units to make the point that we need to make. And as a teacher of the Peaceful Solution, you'll want to be able to do that. You'll keep I don't know of anybody that can, keep it all in mind. There might be some with, what is it, a photographic memory and can remember every page. I know some that come close to that. But for myself and for many of you, if you can remember the main points that are being made in the Peaceful Solution, starting with the character unit and moving on from there, if you can just remember the main points and put them to work in your life and apply them in each and every one, you build on it. The next book that comes along, you build on it again, you remember some things out of there and again. And each time that you go back through the program, you build more and more and more. And you remember more and more and more each time around. It might be just a tidbit each time, but it's okay because you will eventually get the majority of it, and you'll be able to go back. Whether you remember what page it's on or not, you'll be able to go back and know, oh, yeah, I think that was in the character unit, and you flip through there and you find it, and so forth. And it's made it so much easier now having it on computer to where you can actually go and flip through the book on the computer, if you will, and even some cases go ahead and punch in a topic or subject, and it'll pull it up. So keep all that stuff in mind. It's learning tools for us, and as to be a teacher of the Peaceful Solution, you want to have as many things available as you can at your fingertips. So Catan had finished up on page 86, I believe, and talking about, it's about people too. Let's go back first and go to the lesson plan on Lesson Plan 5, page D. Lesson Plan 5, page D. And if you look at procedure number 6, procedure number 6 says to tell students that maintaining a responsible character also includes how we treat others. Yes, very much so how we treat others. Remind students that in Lesson 1, you can count on me. They learned that we are morally responsible for each other. Morally responsible for each other. Have students read the section that's about people too, found on page 86. That's been done. Stress that we all have a responsibility to treat others with respect and compassion, which is what we're going to be doing this evening. And pages 88 through 89 can be assigned as homework. In this case, they are not going to be. We are going to be looking at those pages, hopefully. Okay? Let's turn on over to page 86 and talk about that for a minute, just a little review of what Catan told us about. Now, it's about people too. And it starts out and says you must also maintain responsible interactions with others. What are those responsible interactions? Well, it means not doing or saying anything to intentionally disrespect another person. Now, there's a lot going on in society today where people are being accused of disrespect because they're not calling a person a certain thing that they want to be called and so forth. A lot of times the situations we find ourselves in are a direct result of what we have allowed ourselves to get kind of involved in. And knowing how to conduct ourselves in all these situations is something that you will want to do as a student and a teacher of the Peaceful Solution. Does it all come naturally? No. In fact, arguing comes naturally. So we have to be prepared for these things when they take place. And you're not gonna, you're not going to always do exactly what you would have liked to have done when you sit back and look at the situation and have time to think on it. In fact, if we can look at the overhead for just a minute. When the heat is on, okay, let me explain what I mean about that. You know, when the heat is on. So here we are today, we're in class, we're at the headquarters here, and the heat is not on right now. You know, you're in a learning mode, and we all are in a learning mode and in teaching mode and so forth, but the heat is not really on. You're not under any kind of pressure right now to perform what you learned in the Peaceful Solution, except for the part of, you know, sitting and listening and not, you know, throwing tomatoes at the speaker and so forth. You know, you're doing well on that, practicing self-control. So other than that, though, there's no real situation that kind of sneaks in there from the side and gets you, you know. In fact, when we're talking about the heat is on, a lot of times we might be thinking about, well, you know, man, I'm ready. I've done everything I need to do. I know the Peaceful Solution, and I'm ready. If someone comes up here, you know, yelling at me and calling me names, I'm going to conduct myself respectfully and so forth. But, you know, what if you're not prepared for the way it comes? You know, it zips around another corner and catches you off guard. Okay, that's when we have to have all these things in us and have been practicing these things. Because if you haven't been practicing the Peaceful Solution and that one comes from around the corner, guess what? It's going to get you. You know, it is, really. I remember something that occurred recently. We won't go into it right now, but man, the heat was on. And in my mind, I wasn't being disrespectful to the man I was dealing with. I was really just being matter of fact and, you know, quoting to him what the local law was concerning some certain things. And I felt like I was really within the guidelines of, even as a teacher of the Peaceful Solution, with what I've been able to learn all these years. I felt like everything was quite normal. And after I got an opportunity to look at it, this is where things kind of change a little bit. I got an opportunity to look at it, and I thought to myself, man, even though everybody would say, you know, everybody would say that, no, you were in the right, man. You were right. It was okay to tell him this and all. And you didn't call him names and yell at him and all that stuff and everything. So yeah, no, you did great, man. You know, I mean, the sheriff would even tell me, oh no, you have full right to do this, you know. That's no problem, you know, just don't cause any problems. Just don't retaliate, you know. So that word retaliate gets thrown out there sometimes, and I don't really think we know completely what the retaliate word means. We all know that someone hits us, or, you know, retaliate is hitting them back, right? Or we know if someone's yelling at us, we know to retaliate is yelling back at them and calling them names too, or what have you, right? That's retaliation, right? No complaints, no disagreement, right? So, but what about when you're not doing any of those things and you're doing what everyone would say you have the right to do with your car, your property, what have you. And everything in the Peaceful Solution even tells you, you know, hey, this is your property and people have rights to their property and so forth, and we need to learn to respect each other's property. But you have someone that's disrespecting your property. Well, guess what? There it is on the overhead. The heat is on. Now the heat's on, okay? Now is the time that all your training in the Peaceful Solution will come into play, and, you know, some deeper things than just the not hitting him back with your fist or not hitting him back with your mouth, you know, yelling and everything, but there's other ways too. I'll share that with you in just a minute, but so going back to page 86 where Catan ended up, he was talking about, you know, people say and do things that frustrate, upset, or annoy us, and regardless of how frustrated or angry we are with someone, you must maintain self-control. Well, you know, you might even consider yourself not even being frustrated or angry, that you're just, you know, exercising your rights to do a certain thing, right? Well, okay. So let's move on just a little bit. Before that, though, look at the very bottom of page 86. I want to point something out. And we were talking about reputation and everything a lot here, too, but when I highlighted this, but at the bottom it says, bite your tongue before you gossip or spread rumors about someone. Reputations have been ruined and so forth. But it says if you have to report something that you've seen, be sure to report the facts. Be sure to report the facts. Now, not your interpretation of them. Think twice before you offer a negative opinion about someone. Opinions, you'll notice, are your personal view and not necessarily the truth. It's your opinion of the matter. You know how hard that is to do right there? To really represent the truth or the facts of what took place without putting your own spin on it. You know, as someone in sales, it's extremely hard to do. You want to put your own spin on everything. So when it's just reporting the facts, man, that's another that's often another area right there. But reporting the facts is what we need to do when there's something taking place. You know, just the facts, ma'am, just the facts. You know, that's what we need to do. We need to remember that and not put our own opinion in there. Opinions can get you in a lot of trouble, and can get other people in trouble too. You might consider that when you're giving your opinion on a matter of something taking place, you might be making a false accusation. And we definitely don't want to do that, do we? So, keeping all of that stuff in mind, let's move on over to page 87. Now, this is straight talk. This is just the facts, okay? We all share, that's all of us, you in TV land, those that are here at headquarters, we share a responsibility to treat others with care. Okay, what is this care? You know, we can go back and look in our respect manual, and we can look up what respect is and showing true care and concern to others and so forth. And we can say, look, I was respectful to this person. But it goes so much deeper than that. If you're ever in doubt as to how you should treat someone, you can ask yourself, how would you want to be treated? Underline that if you can right there. How would you want to be treated? And I don't mean just the glib words. People say this all the time. Well, treat others as you want to be treated yourself. Or you remember the golden rule, you know. And these are people, a lot of people that say those things are the same ones that are, yeah, let's go bomb them. They just bombed us, and let's show them who's boss. Or you know, well, what's wrong with that? We have to show them, or they'll keep bombing us, you know. These are the same people that are saying, using this golden rule and saying, treat others as you want to be treated yourself and so forth. You know, think about that for a minute. They just throw it out there. They just use it. You know, it sounds all great and wonderful, but when it comes to doing that, man, that is hard right there, man. You have to take everything that you've ever learned in the Peaceful Solution, everything you've ever practiced, and you better have been practicing it, because you're not going to get there if you haven't been practicing. I'm just telling you now. That includes me too. I'm not counting myself out on this deal. When I read that, And I've read it a million times. We all share a responsibility to treat others with care. If you are ever in doubt as to how you should treat someone, ask yourself how you would want to be treated. I don't know, maybe it's because this is a newer book and I don't have all the lines and notes and everything in there, you know, and it kind of stood out at me a little more. I don't know what it was, but man, that popped out at me and I was like, okay, we've got to talk about this for a minute. You know, and it gives a simple example. If you don't like others cursing at you, don't curse at them. Okay. If having rumors spread about you makes you upset, it will most likely upset someone else if you did the same. Okay, yeah, that's treating others as you would want to be treated. Maintaining responsible interactions with others is quite simple. It all boils down to this. And before I say this part of it, I just want you to think about something. That's easy once you've been practicing the peaceful solution, not to curse at somebody else just because they're cursing at you. Simple deal. Ought to be 101, you know, respect 101, really. I mean, if you're not doing that at this point, work on it because we need to be there. Don't spread rumors about someone else. Okay, that's on another little level there. It steps up a little bit and you got to have a little more gumption, a little more oomph, a little more, you know, a little more guts, I guess you could call it. You really got to have it a little more under control to handle that one. You know, it's so easy to say something about someone else when they were saying something about you, or saying something about someone else and you're like, well, it's true. It's all true. Then you start thinking about, well, let me pull my opinion out right here. Let me pull it out over here and see what facts are left of the matter. And even then, the facts of the matter are there and you're talking about it, you still gossiped. So there is no justification, you know. It's just done. So you think about it and you say, well, okay, I agree with that. I don't want to do that and everything. But what about this? What if someone is doing something to you that everyone would say you're in the right if you take this course of action, you know, stopping him from doing something, whatever. There's a fine line there. You could actually be retaliating. In fact, I would say that sometimes when you, well, I wouldn't say sometimes, if you're being corrected by an authority, a supervisor, a boss, the owner of a company, whatever, a counselor, if you will, someone that you put a lot of trust in and everything, if you're being corrected by that person and you start spitting out excuses, trying to justify your actions, that's retaliation. You are coming back at that authority. You're coming back at them. You're retaliating because you don't like what you're being told. It would be better to accept what you're being told, go home, think about it, and then maybe write down some questions that you could ask the person about what you could do to make it better. Regardless if you think he was being rough on you or not. You know, there might be a valid reason for him to being a little bit firm on something, because it could, if he's not, it could create some harm. And you could take some simple examples. You know, someone's working on a roof and someone says, "Hey, I said don't walk over there." And you turn around like, "What's your problem, man?" And, you know, you don't know you're fixing to walk on a weak spot on the roof and fall through and get killed or broken leg or tear up the person's house or what have you. And he's being a little bit firm about it at the time. You know, that's an extreme kind of example. It's these ones that aren't so extreme that seem to get us, okay? Well, here is the answer. Look at the last sentence there on page 87. And it says, think of others and not just yourself. Huh. All right, you know, what's all that about? What does that mean? Think of others, not just myself. Okay, well, I'm thinking of them, you know. They don't need to be doing that to me. You know, I'm not gonna yell at them or nothing, but they don't need to be doing that to me. And I'm gonna, hey, Chris, come over here for a minute, man. Do you know what dude just did to me? What's going on? You know, it's all taking place. It's caught you off guard. You're rolling with it. Think of others and not just yourself. Now, remember the author of The Peaceful Solution. Man, I remember when he told us one day, somebody was committed or convicted of a rather heinous crime. And I can tell you, I mean, I had an idea about that person too. I'm sure a lot of you did, if you know what I'm talking about. I'm not going to mention his name right now, but because he's not guilty. But even though he was convicted in a court of law of this land, that court of law was not thinking of others and not just themselves. They were thinking of vengeance. They were thinking of retaliation. They were thinking of what to do to get this guy and why he did this thing. They didn't think back about him. They didn't think of others. They didn't say, what has this man been through? Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that the man should have been set off scot-free to go and commit these things again, but he needs some training. He was only doing what he was trained to do since he was a child. He was never taught the peaceful solution, so therefore, how could you hold him accountable? And that's what he meant by he's not guilty. And I know that took a lot of us by surprise. It took me by surprise. I was like, oh. And I felt ashamed for the things I was thinking about that man. So think of others, not just yourself. You got to think about, what have they been through? I know somebody who, I mean, I've been frustrated with him from time to time, and he probably knows it too. But I've been frustrated from time to time, and I've learned to, and along the way, I'm talking about for years, I would force myself to think, I have no right to have these thoughts about this person because I know that I haven't been through what he's been through in a certain way. Of course, if he thought about me too, which I'm sure he did, but he probably thought, okay, I don't know what he's been through. And he would know some of the things I've been through in my life and everything, but I know somebody who went through a lot, and I would think, man, and more than one, but I would think, man, I have not spent a day in prison, but I know people who've spent a lot of their life in prison. And so how do I have anything to compare with that and what they went through that in their environment and interactions with everybody forming what made them, right? How could I possibly even be so arrogant to think that I could judge that person without knowing what they had been through or walking in their shoes for a little while, Empathy, walking in their shoes. I got way too much here. We're not going to make it very far, but I want to hit the overhead there for a minute if you could. So it's not just about you. You got to control the way you think about others. And I'm not going to tell you each one of these. I've got several pages here from the self-control unit, the character unit, and so forth. And some of them have what pages on at the bottom. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on that. I just did, but I'm not going to spend any more time. But it's not just about you. Negative thoughts about others come from a variety of sources, and sometimes people do things that get under your skin. They do that little thing that really bugs you. Or they're doing something that you told them not to do, and you might be some kind of authority or something, But, having any kind of thoughts like he's stupid, he's a jerk, she's a jerk, whatever. These are some negative thoughts about people that a lot of us have probably been getting over for some time. But the way to keep from having these thoughts about people, one of the things, I liked that at the very bottom on the page right there. Man, if we could get this in our head, have thoughts about others. Oh, it's not zooming in. Oh, okay, because I was pressing the wrong button there. Have thoughts about others that you would be willing to share openly. How do you like that one? Okay, so if you're having thoughts about somebody, why don't you remember this saying right here and then, like you were shouting that thought at the rooftops, There's the person right there. Go ahead and shout it at them. Here's your counselors over here, people you trust and admire. Go ahead and shout it at them, And here's your mom and dad, they're over here too. Go ahead and shout it out there where they can hear you, right? You're having these negative thoughts about someone. How would you like to open your mouth and spurt out these thoughts about others that you would be willing to share openly, you wouldn't be willing to share those thoughts openly, would you? The negative thoughts that you're having about the person, you're not willing to share that openly with everybody. You might be willing to share it with someone else you like to gossip with, but we don't want to share those stupid thoughts to everybody in the world, do we? To people we trust, to people we admire, to people that we think they have a great thought of our reputation and so forth, We're all just, perfect and wonderful. No, we don't want to do that, do we? So if we could remember that, have thoughts about others that you would be willing to share openly, maybe we could cut those negative thoughts off a little bit faster, Some of the things that help us do that, here's another page I'd like you to see right there. This is accepting others. Of course, it's out of the acceptance book, you might know. Okay, accepting others. And accepting others means deciding to treat them the way you would like to be treated. See, there we go again. There's those words. You could read past that so fast. I remember the author of The Peaceful Solution telling us to slow down when we read. He said, this isn't just a storybook. I mean, yeah, you could read through that and say, yeah, okay, I agree with that and everything. But when you start slowing down and reading these things, man, accepting others means deciding, making a choice, to treat them the way you want to be treated. It means putting yourself in their shoes and asking yourself, how would I feel if someone treated me this way or made fun of me? Or how would I feel if I had to live through this thing that they lived through, that I know they lived through? How would I have made it through that? What kind of person would I be? What kind of, funky things would be going on in my head if I had to live with what they had to live with? I remember someone telling me one time that, man, all you peaceful solution guys seem to have some issues, And I thought, well, you're right about that one. We all have issues. The person that said that has issues. We all do. The thing about the peaceful solution guys, us sitting right here and you online, the thing about us is that we are trying to deal with our issues, and we would like others to be forgiving and show respect and responsibility when helping us to get rid of our issues, while we're doing the same thing to help them get rid of their issues. And in the process, not being so hard on one another. Okay, I know you got issues, so do I. Now, let's work on it, right? The ability to put yourself in someone else's shoes is called empathy. And having empathy is a way important part of accepting and having consideration for others. So empathy is to understand how others feel. Wow, what a big command, isn't it? How can I possibly understand the way you feel about your years being abused, your years in prison, your years working with cement or sheetrock? Oh, I'm sorry for you already on those things, because I don't like it. How could I possibly, and that's just something kind of on the outer edge. But the other things I mentioned are deep. They're so deep. There's so many things that are formed within our minds and in our hearts with all that influence and the environment around us that we've had to put up with. So here, I got another overhead for you. We might get past this page, but okay, it's all about forgiveness, all right? So I'm going to snatch that from you real quick. It's all about forgiveness. Okay, so forgiving others who wronged you might not be the easiest thing to do, but without this very important character trait, your hurt and disappointment can turn to anger, resentment, and hate. And by maintaining the positive character traits of forgiveness and respect, you can serve, right here, get this, check this out, I'm going to slow down a minute. You can serve as a moral influence to others. And see, that's the thing that we've got to become. Man, we've got to, as a teacher of the Peaceful Solution and a student of the Peaceful Solution, we've got to become that moral influence You're not going to change anybody by going up and beating them in the head. You've got to be that moral influence. They've got to see your conduct, your actions, the way you talk, the way you handle things. And do you know that the very person that there might be some property dispute or something, you're within the law and everyone's, okay, yeah, you can do that, it's not a problem, he's in the wrong. Why not go ahead and take the hurt? Why not go ahead and accept that person, I had to stop and look. I just wanted to, I was really kind of messed up about this thing that took place because I had not taken time to stop and think about what this person had been through in his life. I just thought he was some dumb nuthead, I had not taken that opportunity. And when I took that opportunity to think about him and what he had been through and the things that he's still going through and his family and everything, which I know some about, I had to stop and think, man, what kind of moral influence am I being? Okay, yeah, I'm keeping this law and everything, yeah, fine, okay. And, all he's doing is looking at it as I'm the idiot. I'm the one hurting him. That's what he believed and still believes probably. And what I was doing, he didn't like, even though it was completely lawful. I was with every right, with every aspect of the law and so forth, except for one thing. I was not serving as a moral influence to this man. And I did not treat him the way I wanted to be treated. Now, you have to look and say, well, I wouldn't be out here doing what he's doing to me. He's doing this, and this. I wouldn't be out here doing that. So yeah, I would expect that if I was doing that, somebody would treat me this way, No, that's not it. Retaliation never solves a problem. It only creates more. And you can be retaliating without even knowing you're retaliating. I can tell you that. If you're not treating others as you would want to be treated, and you're not taking into consideration what that person's been through and what his life has been like up to this point, here's one of the things right here that can help us. Now, we talked about this a little bit in the last class, and I know Katani mentioned it too, but in the last class I mentioned it quite a bit about the optimism and pessimism and your thoughts. And so being an optimistic person and not having this pessimism, which is a negative character trait, by the way, I want you to remember that. Pessimism is a negative character trait. Go look it up. So if you're being a pessimist, you have a negative character trait that you need to overcome. Am I pessimistic sometime? You betcha, but I'm trying not to be the majority of the time, And so that's when you start making some headway, when it starts building up a little bit. At some point in time, people look at you and you have a reputation of being an optimistic person. Now you're on the track. And one of the things about an optimistic person is they can find it much easier to look at people and say, what have they been through? What have they gone through? What am I doing if I say this or that? We wouldn't want to do anything to anybody that, like if you were trying to help someone quit smoking, what are you going to do? Show up with a box of candy cigarettes? Hey, candy cigarettes, oh, they're okay. You can eat them. Hey, it's just sugar. It's all right. What's the big deal? Well, the big deal is you're being a negative influence on that person, even though you've done nothing wrong, right? You're not thinking about what that person's going through. And maybe you smoked at one time, was quitting smoking, you want to help your body. You want to overcome some things and at least let the vitamin C you're taking go to work in you instead of blowing it out by smoking, So anyways, think about it kind of along those lines too. But right here's another. Let's take a close look at humility, all right? Close look at humility. In the paragraphs up above that, it's talking about responding to a bully in a peaceful way is the easy thing to do. It takes self-control, courage, and here's a word, humility, and wisdom. Now, wisdom comes when you've been using this a while, and you have this knowledge, and you can put it to work. using the peaceful solution and respond peacefully. But it does take that word humility to do this. You have to have a lot of humility. You got to be humble to sit back and look and think of what others have been through, not just yourself, and not want to come up with some kind of excuses or argue your point. Argue your point. Get the word argue your point. That's just retaliation, man. If you're arguing your point and you've become a bully. Take a closer look at humility. Humility is a positive character trait. A humble person has the ability to sacrifice being right, even though everyone's telling you you're in the right, you have every right to do this and all this, you know. What about the other person, though? You're not thinking about that other person. Being humble should never be confused with allowing a bully to take advantage of you or being weak. Okay? So you might say, well, there's my answer right there. I can do that. It takes self-control to stop and consider the best and most effective way to handle a situation. And I can tell you right now, the author of The Peaceful Solution, when he was approaching some of these situations, now there were times when he had to stop and say firmly, no, we need to do it this way. But many times he would take into consideration what the person had been through. I shouldn't say many times, I should say all the time. Would take into consideration what that person had been through, what they were going through in their life, and what his potential was, because he always looked farther than what was known. He always looked at what potential that person had inside, that he could see what growth was taking place, and he didn't want to stifle that growth by, being one of the ones that the person could possibly throw up there and say, well, it's because of you. He never wanted to be that person that they could do that with. Even though the person would be in the wrong to do that, the person would be showing that they're not responsible for their own decisions and their own thoughts. Even though all of that, Israel Hawkins, the author of The Peaceful Solution, would look and say, no, don't do anything at this point. We'll work on this. We'll work on this together. I've seen that take place over and over again. Because you know why? He was thinking of the other person. And to do that, that word humility is a big, giant, massive word, humility. That's what it is, and it means that much too. It means a lot. Okay. We're moving right along here. Let me not show that one yet. Okay, different strokes for different folks right there. See that one? This is in the respect unit, but and this is talking about, okay, one man's junk is another man's treasure and so forth, but I highlighted a couple things. Because we are a society of diverse people, cultures, and ethnic backgrounds, our upbringing and experiences differ. See, even our upbringing as a child differs. I remember, getting spanked when I did something wrong with a peach tree limb. It wasn't really a limb. It seemed like it at the time, but it was just a branch, a switch they call it. And man, when that thing, I just got chills just then. When that thing hit my legs, oh man, I can tell, I got chills right now, as old as I am. I remember that deal. And the problem is, it didn't change me. It put something in there that I remembered. I'm not going to do that again, at least around my mom or dad, And that's usually how it would go. It would usually stop me for the moment, and I would decide not to do that around the person that might correct me on the situation or punish me on the situation. But did it change my heart? Not really. Now, the thought process that took place after that, there's some of those things that did. It did change my heart and my mind on the subject. Was it because it got my attention on that right there? Could be. Could be that it got my attention. I thought about it a little bit more, But some people have never been spanked in their life. Some people weren't spanked with a switch. They don't even know what I'm talking about at this time, But others have been spanked with electric cords, with boards, with things we couldn't even imagine. things maybe you and I couldn't imagine, or maybe you can. Maybe you've been there. I don't know. I would have to consider you as an individual and what you'd been through on why you're the way you are. So remembering that people value different things for many different reasons. When you regard something as valuable, you take into consideration its worth as measured in usefulness or importance. And you do the same thing with people. And that's what our author of The Peaceful Solution was able to do. He did that with people. Hey, let's go ahead and turn to page 88. Okay. Now, see, when you look back at the lesson plan, on lesson plan 5, page D, you don't really have to go there. I just want to read this. It says, stress that we all have responsibility to treat others with respect and compassion. That's what we're doing right now. We're stressing that. I could just tell you, you know, we need to stress this thing, you know. Well, how are you going to stress it? Am I going to walk around behind you saying it all day, stressing it, nagging at you to stress it in your mind? No, we're stressing it right now. We're expounding on it. We're making it something big in your mind. We're stressing this point for you in hopes that it can make a difference in the student's mind. And so you, therefore, as a teacher of the Peaceful Solution, have to keep in mind, sometimes you have to spend a little time on a subject. I remember not too long ago, William, he likes to use a lot of slides, right? And with some different graphics and everything on it to help us visual learners remember what we're learning. And that does help for a visual learner. And then the person that it takes pure activity, you know, what is that, kinetic? The one that you have to do it with your hands, you have to actually experience it, you know. There are some of us that are like that too in certain areas. And one of the things, we're not even going to really get to it, I think. We might, but yeah, we can do it real quick. Let's just go there. Look at the top of page 88. Does maintaining a responsible character mean I can never make a mistake? The answer is no. You're going to make mistakes. And you're also, let's read on, by being in complete control of your thoughts, considering the decision you make, and weighing the consequences of your actions, you know, stop, think, options, self-control, you can avoid many of the so-called mistakes people make in life. One of the reasons why people make poor choices, and see, this is what it says, so-called mistakes, they're actually poor choices. The reason people make poor choices is because they think the only way to learn about something is to experience it. And that's not the case. We hope, as teachers of the Peaceful Solution, you should hope to help your students understand by the examples that are in the Peaceful Solution, and the examples in news headlines, and the examples in everything that we talk about and go through. We should hope that by those examples, a person can learn without having to experience the horrid things themselves. And have you ever heard the saying, experience is the best teacher? The fact is, experience can be the worst way to learn a lesson. And it gives the example of we shouldn't experience taking an addictive drug to know it's addictive. And that, you know, that's kind of like almost a no-brainer, but yet people do it anyway. And I think a lot of times it's more curiosity than anything else when they say, well, you know, I went and took that so I could see for myself it was addictive. Well, no, there's deeper problems going on than that right there. You know, to go and do that. Now, there's some huge issues, you know, that's going on with the person. And so what do we need to do? We need to think about that person, what they've been through, what they're going through now, and what has brought them up to this point to where they're thinking that it's okay to go and take some drugs to find out if it's addictive or not. You know? Okay. Hopefully they can learn from experience. There's a lot of experience in this room of people trying drugs and finding out that they were addictive. Is it not? There's plenty of people here that could attest to that. I know you. I know some of you out there watching online, and I can tell you there's many of us that could attest to that fact already, and we could give you story after story after story about how it affected our lives and others around us and so forth, and it's not going to make any difference at all to you if you have it in your mind because of whatever issue's going on with you at this time that you're going to go out and try it too. And any excuse like, well, it said it was addictive, I had to go see myself. No, that's excuses. Okay, so we're going to stop right there for just a minute and talk about how to get past some of these things. Remembering, of course, the self-control diagram, and I know William's going to kind of laugh at me when I do this, but it all works synergistically together, right? Remember that word, synergistically, okay? You know where I heard that? I heard that from the teacher of the Peaceful Solution. He used that word, and I kind of caught hold of it and remembered, because it all works together. You know, there's an incident or a trigger right there, which brings on the thoughts, which brings on the feelings. And once those feelings are kind of cranking, ooh, you're on the way, buddy. You know, need to go back here a step to the thoughts and start working on that. Need to actually go back to where the incident or the trigger at some point is not any longer an incident or trigger. But for now, if you got those coming along, learn to control your thoughts. You know, these are your first steps in the defense of. And when you get to that point where the feelings are there and they're running rampant, man, you need to back up really and get hold of it before you start making some actions and making the wrong choices or even mistakes, and then reaping the consequences that come with it. Yes, by doing the right thing, you can reap rewards, but even the reward, the negative thing you might get, consequences and rewards, sometimes we think of rewards as positive all the time, but, you know, you can think of, there's a saying that says something like, you know, your reward is, you know, what your heart desires. Your reward is what you go out there and sow. You know, you're going to reap that, whatever that reward is that comes from what you sowed, from what you're out there doing, you know. That's going to be your reward. If you're out there breaking into houses every night and everything, your reward, it's a consequence too, but your reward is going to be time in jail. You know, that's just, it's going to end up there. You know, it's not going to last forever for you, okay? So keep those things in mind, that it's all works together and everything, right? Hey, remember when the heat is on too, man. Remember that. When the heat is on, we can think about all these things in advance. We can set our mind in advance. We can have the best intentions, and you have to do this. You have to. You got to set your mind in advance, and you got to watch your thoughts, but you got to set your mind in advance. You have to do that. Setting your mind in advance to maintain your positive character traits begins by first considering how important it is to have moral character, to be trusted, admired, respected, known as an honest, reliable, compassionate person. And the next step is to make up your mind not to be influenced, to do anything that will compromise your character. Don't let anybody talk you into doing anything wrong. Well, you know how that talking you into it comes sometimes? Well, it comes, guess what? When the heat is on. It comes not from the person you know is doing some negative stuff and talking negative things, and you know he's a negative influence, and you already are determined to stay away from him. It's not coming from them. It's coming from the one you don't know about. It's coming from that curveball and pitfall. You know, the curveball, man, it comes around at you like this. You know, it's coming from what you don't expect. And so that thing that comes from what you don't expect, and then by not having your mind set completely in advance for all the situations, and by not remembering the self-control diagram, knowing that incidents and triggers come your way, and not remembering to control your thoughts and to stop and think about all these things, you know, before you take action, you know. See, if you're not practicing these things, you've got them in your head. We've all got them in our head. We've got them in our books. We can carry the book around with us, but if we don't open it and practice what it says, you can read it. You can tell me what page something is on and ask me a question from that page. I knew a guy that, man, he really did have a lot of these books down pat, and knew what page everything was on and on. He'd come up and say, I've told you this before, I know, maybe there's some new people here, but he'd come up and say, hey, David, he said, you know how it says on page 88 of the Peaceful Solution that, you know, experience can be the worst way to learn a lesson? And I'd be like, no. I don't know if it's on page 88 or not. Was that what he was trying to trick me into? Was it not on page 88 or something, or what? I said, I know that to be a fact, and I know it says it in the Peaceful Solution, and I know, given a little bit of time, I'll tell you what page it's on, but I'm not going to agree to what you're asking me right here, and just by saying, oh yeah, I know, you know what that would do? What if that person was just trying to see if I would just, say, oh yeah, I know. Well, there I have lied about it being on page 88. He knows I'm a liar about it being on page 88. He knows I don't know what in the world I'm talking about. So I find it just a little more simple to say, no, no, I don't. But I do know what it says, and I do try to practice that in my actions and then watch him walk away. But, and you might say, well, is that retaliation? Well, no, I was answering his question. It's just a creative way to answer it instead of saying, well, no, I don't know what it says on page 88. You could do it that way too. I said no, that, to his general question, and then told him what it goes along with, that yes, I do know it does say that, and yes, I do try to practice that in my life, if that's what you're asking, But if what you're asking, if I know, breaking it down, trying to take the factual words that were in that question, and then knowing a little bit about the person and what his real intention was, Anyway, so looking at that, though, I just wanted to say that knowing what's in the book is one thing, but hearing it's one thing, right? Knowing what's in it is one thing, but actually going out and doing it, oh man, that's another one altogether. Because I'm going to tell you now, when that curveball hit me, a week or two ago, when that curveball hit me, and I really, even as a peaceful solution teacher, I knew I wasn't doing anything against the law or anything like that, and I knew that. But what I wasn't taking into consideration was what this has been about right here. It's about people too. Catan went through a whole section of it, and and right here on Straight Talk, facts, just the facts, on page 87, think of others and not just yourself. And when I read those things there, and I remembered what the author of the Peaceful Solution was telling us about the person that's not guilty because of what they grew up with and everything, and they haven't been taught, and that it's our job to teach those people, man, I just had to sit back and think, what I had done. What I had done. I had to take responsibility for what I had done. And so that's something to think about when dealing with other people, which we all are, dealing with other people. And we all hope to be dealing with other people with our own classrooms and prison classes and other classes and so forth. There's a lot of people that like to go into prisons and teach the Peaceful Solution. I'm one of them. I enjoy it. I miss it ever since COVID. It's been, kind of getting back on track. But before that, it was like a lot of time was spent there. And the Peaceful Solution, again, it's introducing morality to the mind that has not really had it had much of it introduced. In a world of negative values and negative influences and so forth, here it is right here. In the preface on this particular book, In Responsibility, and it's not the only book that says this, but it talks about how the author is telling us that teachers greatly influence our future leaders. This means teachers have a major impact on the outcome of the world's future. And get this, just a few words placed in a person's mind at the proper time can actually guide that person's thinking for the rest of his or her life. A morally sound, wise, caring teacher, one that not only does what they're supposed to do, but goes beyond that and thinks about the other person, thinks about their student. How many of you don't have to answer this out loud, but how many of you were considered the class troublemaker, the school troublemaker, the school troublemaker for life, elementary, junior high, high school. How many of you were that person, right? Yeah, I could raise my hand. So they all knew about me before I got to the next class. They knew what to expect. They already had me down. Very little did I ever hear a morally sound, wise, caring teacher say words to me. There have been some, and I remember them completely. And yes, they did have an effect on my life. And, hey, if I saw them today, I would share with them what I learned in the Peaceful Solution, A morally sound, wise, caring teacher can help 1, 10, or 10,000 students on their way to becoming morally sound, wise, caring adults. And so let's see. Anyway, okay. In the introduction, it says, we ask that you be aware of the fact that these lessons are designed only for the purpose of developing the student's character. We're not preaching to them. We're not trying to change their religion. We're not trying to change their political affiliation. We're not trying to change what they think about taxes or the border or the war in Iran or whatever. I mean, yeah, we do know that change will take place when we do this, but what we want to do, and the only reason we're doing this, is for the purpose of developing the student's character. They teach acceptable character education that will penetrate and change the heart and mind of a student. I might add, only if you're thinking about the other person. If you're not thinking about the 20 or 30 students you have and know something about each one of those and how to penetrate that mind, But anyway, it says this program will produce the result in young people that society desires to see. And then it goes on to describing that they're more effective when the teacher encourages and practices the principles of the Peaceful Solution throughout the day as incidents occur. And there's another place in here that he specifically says that that in this, what we're doing is we are introducing the student to morality. In a world or in a school or something where there's so many negatives around them all the time, what we're doing in the Peaceful Solution is we're introducing them to this moral program right here of how it can change their lives. And it's just an introduction to enter into the mind, that one seed that's planted where they might go looking for that later on in life. And remember that you were a wise, caring teacher that had their best interest in mind some point in their life. So with that, I'd like you to remember, the Peaceful Solution. Let's all practice it from day to day. We'll continue this lesson on, where'd my little thing go here? Here we go. Next class is on 4/17/2024. That's Wednesday, 4/17/2024. And that's at 5:30 p.m. We'll continue this and hopefully get through that page 88 for you. Okay? Glad y'all could make it. Hope to see you again. And hey, remember to think about the other person for real. I mean, that's what it's all about. Think about those teachers that you had in your life, in your childhood, in your teen years, as an adult. The ones that were caring teachers that thought about you too, that showed some interest in what you were going through and what you'd been through, and were able to penetrate that little bit of that hard shell to get something positive in your mind. All right? Remember that. And let's try to be that person. Only on, I was going to say on steroids. We don't want to be on steroids, but let's try to be that person, 100 times over again. Really out there on it, okay? So thank you for coming.